You're listening to the East Meets West Pakistani Professional Journeys podcast, released bi-weekly every Sunday at 5 p.m. on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple iTunes. Welcome to the East Meets West Pakistani Professional Journeys podcast. Today we have Nauman Khan, who completed his master's in marketing at Brunel University of London. He's worked in numerous roles such as brand manager at R&I Electrical Appliances, a product market manager at Hisense Group, and a product manager at Group SEB. He's currently managing his own business as an innovation and growth consultant at NSK Trading. Noman is also involved in the community with his involvement with Soul Brothers. Pleasure having you on the
I
podcast.
appreciate it, Azim. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be part of your chat group and your space.
Awesome. I find it really interesting how we actually met because we literally met in one of the cricket matches that, Soul Brothers Canada, you were sitting on the side. I was one of the players in the team that was running. Yeah, it's a small world in terms of the meeting, right? So,
It definitely is. I do come to these events once in a week. I'm not playing there directly, but
yeah.
because Danish Javed and I, we co-founded this community. So I have to ensure that I'm there. And I was surprised to see you've got a big fan following on YouTube. You've been doing amazing stuff. So that sort of resonates with what we're doing as a crowdsourced community at our end as well.
Yeah, I got introduced like in the, like the WhatsApp group. I find it really nice how there's a division of, all the sports. And then obviously, like there's the meetups and whatnot. And there's a cricket league going on as well. So it's really interesting. So did you have that at the beginning, like in terms of how you wanted this group to shape, or did it shape over time, I
So I
guess?
think it's sort of
Uh,
transitioned by accident. And I'll just
okay.
take a quick detour back to how it started is actually Danish and myself, we met each other at Sui Southern Gas Company. So we as marketers, I think we have that inclination of doing something unique out of the box. So back in 2016, we thought that we'll come up with a crowdsource community. Why not we get into this space and see that what we can do? So this and trust me, what really happens in the group was people asking for mechanics or grooming options at the best barber, or what is the cheapest easy load option available at a call center. So these were the basic generic questions, people were asking. And we sort of reshaped ourselves as a crowdsource community where people would come up with unconditional support, helping out each other. So what we realized in that time being between 2017 and 2020, I think there was a big trust deficit in the Pakistani South Asian society that we speak. So
Mhm.
people wanted to, skip a bar of verification and validation, of going through the
Right.
hassle and process of knowing things. So if we had personally tried a service or product, so our testimonial would certainly have a meaning to adding credibility to that. And then when people were talking about, oh, if you've tried it, let's go for it. We continued serving it by expanding globally through WhatsApp communities. To your point, I think WhatsApp was a more to one coordination or a communication piece that we took advantage during the COVID times because people were at home, people wanted to get together, which we were not able to do. So WhatsApp was a mean to sort of connect each others. So we started off with our global chapters in Canada, in US, we started in UK, we started in Australia, and then we started in UAE and GCC countries. So UAE was one of the pioneer groups that we started up with, but those are independently owned channels. They're managed by Soul Brothers community members, and there's no, I would say, intrusion or infiltration of our thoughts and processes because they believe in the community itself. So right
Right.
now, as we speak, Soul Brothers Pakistan has been in about 11 countries. We have more than 25,000 members across various WhatsApp groups. And what we are doing is, again, unconditional crowdsource community help. But apart from that, general networking, but also at the same time, we want to support healthy activities and initiatives that are managed by our players. So cricket was one of the examples. So right now in Canada only, we have about 5 days of badminton, 1 day of cricket, 1 day of football. And we have on the sidelines, we've got golf, squash, table tennis. So these are all sort of activities are owned by community members for the community members. And the rule of thumb is that We want to support a healthy environment. We want to support, upscaling the community at the next level in terms of health initiatives, in terms of networking. Sports is also part of networking. So not just
Exactly.
jobs, mentoring, all of that, business, marketplace, all of that is working side by side. But I think sports is one of the avenues that which actually works really well. But and again, it is a male, I would say, oriented community, but we're not restricted to the main target group as well because we do family events as well. We collaborate with local crowdsource communities like Friends Cafe in Canada. We do 14th August events, Azadi events. We do SERI events. These are some of our flagship events, but we're also planning to sort of scale up our exposure by expanding into other parts of Canada. So yeah, it's an ongoing journey, and I know
Yeah,
that you're part
that's
of it. So it feels amazing to be part of this journey.
awesome. So I guess we could take a step even back. Like, do you mind talking about your relation to Pakistan? Obviously, you manage the community, but what's your relation to Pakistan? Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Karachi, and I've lived. I was born in Federal Bay Area. I lived there for about 2 years, so I don't remember much. But I moved to Kakisha, Clifton. So I've lived all my life in southern parts of Karachi, and up until 2010 when I decided to get a more exposure to get my master's education from Brunel. So I
Yeah.
think what I believe that back in Pakistan, now that things have changed slightly in a better way. I think back in the days, I think what we were lacking was counseling, better education options, and mentorship. So if we had to do everything on our own, our parents guided us, but again, we had to identify what's our potential. And I'll be honest, I was a very pretty average student back in I skipped my O A levels, I did my matriculation intermediate. By the time I did my bachelor's from CBM, that's where I realized, oh, education is not that difficult. But it was too late. By the time I graduated, I realized that I need to study. So that's why I
Yeah.
decided to go for my master's from Brunel University, West London. So I graduated in 2011 with a degree in merit. It was unfortunate that at that time UK was still going through the post 2009 recession era. So I didn't plan to stay in UK in the first place. I just wanted to complete my degree and come back to Pakistan and then assess what my options are in terms of business or career, wherever, life takes you. So in 2013, I actually started my career as a media planner and a media buyer at Unicom Group or OMD. So I was the account manager and I worked there for at least a year. It was a very fast paced environment. Moving forward, I think I sort of got a little laid back when I started to think, let's just hold back. Things are getting pretty
Yeah.
fast and lightning in the corporate environment. Let's just scale back and work for a government organization and see how it works. That's where I started working in Swiss Southern Gas Company. 3.5 years. I worked there in corporate side, corporate communications. And then fast forward, I did some experience at RNI for Kenwood. You might have seen the iconic ads of Kenwood where Nawazuddin and Aisha Khan were a part of two campaigns back to back in 2017 and 2018. So I was the curator of that campaign. And we had to call in Nawazuddin Siddiqui and Aisha Khan in Dubai. We did an amazing 2 years back to back campaigns for Kenwood AC. Shout out to two of those guys, Imad, who's head of Synergy in Pakistan, and also we have a few other colleagues of mine. Hassan Javed was also part of it, but Zahiruddin was also one of the directors of those TVCs. So it was an amazing work that we did back in Pakistan. So then moving on, I I switched some jobs in between. Automobile side, I worked for a Chinese OEM called Chang'an. I was launched as an SUV CX-70 there. And then I was part of Hisense as brand manager. That was basically my first brand manager role, working for a huge Chinese OEM, a growing company called Hisense. And then COVID hit. I think this is where I took a small pause and I, sort of revisited, the highs and lows of my career. And I realized that probably I'm not where I should have been. And, let me reassess my options. I mean, my kid was probably 4 years at that time. And I had to think about our kids' future, my career, how it needs to
Right.
transition. The other side is with, well, mostly in North America and Europe, but I have very close ties in Pakistan. But what made me move to Canada was obviously better opportunities, better life, better future for the kids. And obviously, and I'll be honest, it was the Canadian passport too. Like we all dream about having a better passport, stop waiting in queues and lines at Jerry's office or VFS Global, whatever. But yeah, I mean, but I think that sort of decision really paid off. Now that I look back, it's been 4.5 years now in Canada. Again,
Yeah,
you see your highs and lows in the industry, regardless of which country you are. But again, there are some key takeaways in wherever you're living. So it's been quite a journey, I would say, coming to Canada as well.
for
Yeah.
sure. So I guess when you first moved to Canada, what was the initial struggles you came across? Because I guess you moved, it was, oh, actually, no, COVID happened 2020, 2021. So you moved before that. So still, how was the experience in terms of getting set, the overall experience?
I think we were surrounded by a number of myths at that time that getting a job is easy. Living your life in Canada is much easier. Your lifestyle will improve rapidly. You'll find a house. So, but when I landed, I started interacting with people that I knew, even from Soul Brothers community, which was already here in 2019. So people gave me a reality check. This is not the case. People, who say the situation in Canada has evolved or is in a better shape, probably they haven't been part of this community, this country before. So things are changing quite fast, and especially after COVID. Settling down is, I think, one of the key, I think, struggles for any newcomer. For me, 50% of the work is done when you get into Canada. The remaining 50% is stabilizing on your own feet and be on a sustainable level, be able to provide for your family. So I
Right.
think I learned the hard way, the most quicker way, because I was guided by the right people. I surrounded myself with the right people that don't buy a house, go for a rent because the mortgage rates are insane, prices are going up, apply
Right.
for a job. And there were two classes of people suggesting me that apply for a blue collar worker, or there was another one which is asking me to apply for your level of job. So I trusted my guts based on my skill set and experience, and I applied for the level of job which I was seeking. And I was lucky enough to have landed the job despite COVID. So I realized that jobs are out there. You just have to market yourself, and you have to be, very vocal about your experience, be confident about it. And you should set a vision of yourself for the next 5 years, even though things have been quite uncertain, but still it sets your path in the right direction. So yeah, I mean, this is how things have pretty much evolved. And I think it's for the better how, considering the situation has been the last few years in Canada, I think things are moving smoothly in the right direction.
Right. So you did mention the right people. Like a lot of people when they move here, it's the struggle because everyone's willing to give advice, right? So being able to pinpoint what advice to actually follow and then finding the right people who've gone through and are, either set or doing well. So how was that process like for you? Was it through, the Soul Brother community or was it through family? Like what was your main connection that allowed you to find these right
I
people?
think it's a mix of everything: community, friends,
Okay.
families, and people around me. So I go with the concept. I remember when in my school, one of my teacher, his name is Ali Imran, he used to teach us chemistry when I was doing my metric. And he was my physics teacher. He said to me one thing that really stuck in my mind is that pay it forward. If you go
Mm.
through a success in life, or if you transition into something where you want to be, pay that respect forward to someone new in your place who wants to seek advice from you. So I held to that, I think that suggestion and advice for probably 20, 25 years now. And even till date, whoever approaches me on LinkedIn, through community, even in my family, I counsel them, I mentor them. I try to give them more
Yep.
insightful and practical advices as much as I can. Understanding that I do have a very limited knowledge, limited experience. I don't consider myself as a master of everything but I would still, based on my experience, my skill set, I try to be brief about it. It should it should translate into some sort of a help. It doesn't necessarily have to be people from your community. It can be anything. It's at least for mankind, you can at least do that. And I think that's the least that we can do in our busy lives of today. We love to talk. And what if with our expertise, we create a change in someone's life? So this is what I really believe in. And I always encourage people to pay it forward. So at least they continue. And there's some sort of a ripple effect, which helps so many struggling families and peoples out there.
Right. So I guess in terms of the first role that you moved in Canada, like how was that? How did you get exposure to that, and how did you manage to get that role, and how was that experience?
So surprisingly, my first role was actually I was working for one of my colleague Rashid. And this was for working as a Amazon merchant. And shout out to Rashid Bhai for helping me. Actually, Naveed was also part of it. Naveed was one of the person who actually took me to Rashid, and I started working part time. And he told me that until you find a job, you should work with me. So he gave me tips and tricks, exposure to the market. If you go get exposed to a corporate environment, this is what you're supposed to do culturally. You should not, you normally get a cultural shock moving into a new environment. So he sort of tones it
Yep.
down. You meet new people, get to know about their business, their affairs, how job market works. So I think that was some sort of a preliminary prerequisite. And I'm lucky to have had that information. When I
Yep.
actually found my first job, this was back in Feb of 2021. This was in Hisense. They actually approached me through a consultant. She asked me if I can come in for an interview. And when I gave the interview to one of the the general managers of the company, the GM, his name was Rocky. He was actually surprised that I worked in Hisense in Pakistan. He thought that Hisense was not, had no exposure in South Asian country. So I said that no, I was part of Hisense and I launched laser TVs and white good appliances, even their air conditioning system. So, and then he had doubts. So I said, you can verify this information from one of my colleague who works in Dubai. And we did a Pakistan versus Australia activation at the cricket ground. So he reached out to the reference and it checks out that I was part of that conversation. He even exchanged a few emails, the work emails that I did, and he was good to go. He get a go ahead and I finally got in, landed my first job. I think for me, it was a bonus for me because it was a manager job for me, product marketing manager. This is
Yep.
something where I really wanted to go into. My first boss, Megan, she was really helpful. I had an amazing team back then. Some of them are still working there and I'm still in touch with them. But I think for me, paving the way towards the Canadian market or the Canadian landscape, the transition was quite easy because I had prior understanding about the business. So that's what I say is that
Okay.
having business knowledge is really important. Number two is your willingness to learn and adapting to new environments. So if your nature is, if you're willing to speak to other people from other nationalities, getting to know about their culture, about the company's culture, you're willing to learn more. So you need to have close coordination, collaborative skill set. So that actually helped me in terms of, paving the way towards the Canadian market. And that has, for me, helped me a lot. So there have been two instances. First, with my first job at OMD, I understand that the job requirement was quite stressful, working day and night, conventional buying and planning, but that helped me in my business acumen. The same happened with Hisense Canada. It was my first job understanding the Canadian landscape. So definitely, if you land at the right place and you're surrounded by the right people, and even your coworkers are supportive, it really helps you.
Got you. So I guess for the product manager role, for people listening, like they hear the word product manager, but if you were to explain to someone who has no idea what the role entails, like how would you go about explaining that?
Product manager is more about a product owner or a business owner, a person who has good business acumen, who's able to extract the pain points of the business and be able to translate all those pain points into working or successful initiatives. So this involves profit and loss, product marketing strategies, product life cycle management, collaborative environment within different departments, and making sure that you are on top of your category. So
Right.
for a product manager, again, my role was more towards the consumer electronics side. So for me, my category was my baby. So for me, for example, at my last company, Group Sub, it was kitchen electrics. So kitchen electrics is anything kitchen with a wire, which would be air fryers, deep fryers, grills, breakfast, beverage. So there are like 130 SKUs that we're talking about. For me, it was not about
Right.
those 130 SKUs. It was the business, the size of business. How is it growing year over year? Why is there a dip? Why is there a decline? What are the market factors, external factors affecting those sales? What is the usage and attitude for the segment that I'm looking into? So I think the success really contributes to your growth. Let's say 6 out of 7 SKUs or segments are growing and one of them is failing. So you need to
Yeah.
identify that, can we even diversify? Should we just shut it down? Is the product life cycle ending for that category? So I think it's a very holistic role. It's not very specific to one specific product or a set of products, but it's a whole universe which surrounds the product itself. And in order to effectively manage that product, you have certain set of tools. You need to have good skills in project management. You need to have good collaborative skills. But most importantly, I think the power of influence is really important. How do you inspire sales teams, marketing communication
Right.
teams, your external stakeholders, and influence them that your product is better than any other product out there in the market? What is make to believe that your product stands out as compared to the other competition out there? You're not even a distant second or third in the market, but why would a buyer buy your product? So I think the art of storytelling is really important, but that communication needs to be consistent and very crystal clear.
Great. No, I felt that was a really strong explanation. I think you nailed it. Pretty well understandable there. Now you're managing your own firm. That presents its own challenges as it is. So how has that experience been and how have you been finding it?
So I think it's been an interesting time period since June. I've been working on 2 consultants. So, so I think for me, being part of that process is really important for any business. So I feel like I'm product owner for both of my clients. So I
Yeah.
understand the pain points. I understand the pressures. I understand how the market is evolving. All in that, I think it's quite interesting. But at the same time, what I've understood is that in order to, I think for a salesperson, he always upsells the product to a customer. For a
Yeah.
marketer, he
Exactly. Yeah.
needs to upsell his skill as well. So in order to do that, what I'm trying to do on the side is to acquire additional specialization skills, which are a little different than what I'm typically doing, but I'm still actually trying to explore my potential. And what I realize is that as a consultant, you're part of 4 major stages of development in any business, whether it's requirement phase, testing phase, designing, or even just going live. So what I'm actually doing is acquiring new skills, which obviously opens a plethora of challenges and opportunities. But for me, that's where I think that's where my potential lies. And during the time, I'm actually reflecting, if I were to go back at that time of COVID, where I was looking my, past 10 years where I need to be, I'm actually sort of assessing that phase 2 in my life. And I realized that this is
Yeah.
something that I need to explore. I haven't sort of sort of upgraded myself in terms of my skill set since my master's. It's been 11 years or 12 years. But now in the world of AI, things are moving so
Mm.
fast and competitive. Conventional skills
Yeah.
will eventually deplete. So you need to acquire more competitive skills that adds value to your skill set, but also you're able to earn more. So that's something that financially you have to take those decisions as well.
Right. So I guess even like for starting your own business, like how to, coming from the corporate
Yeah.
environment, you get that paycheck and all that, and moving to your own business, like how did you get over that fear? Because a lot of people, you know, there's a there's a mindset that, it's like how can or a fear of, failing basically. So how did you overcome that? And like what was your thought
I think
process
that's
for
a
that?
really good question. In Canada, if you're belonging from a working background or you're a blue collar or white collar worker, so you're more inclined to a 9 to 5 work or working in a hybrid setting. So you're prone to that. You become gravitated towards the job mindset. So getting out of it is really
Mhm.
important. It's really difficult because you have to sort of change your way of thinking because you've been working 9 to 5, 10 years of your time. Everything surrounds around that nine to
Right.
five. So I think you have to look at your success and failures, weigh them, see if it is okay to transition into a new career or if you find a good opportunity and if you find the right people who you need to spend your time more and they guide you better. I
Yep.
think that's really important. So in order to reshape your mindset, I think it's really important to have better mentors. If you're working 9 to 5 and you still complain about your job, maybe surround yourself with someone who pushes you more. You might not like it, but at least they are the people who are guiding the right people making money. And this can be anything, working on cryptocurrencies, working on I don't know, some sort of trading. It can be anything. There are endless possibilities. We're like living in a digital age. So you need to work with mentors who surround yourself with them, talk about, the business or the type of work that you need to do, assess your skill set, where you're good at, identify your potential, take some time out. Even people get laid off, they move from one company to another. They didn't never get the opportunity to assess themselves. So it's really important every 3 to 4 years in your career, you take a small break. It can be over, vacations as well. Just,
Yeah.
disconnect yourself with work and think about how better you can add value. How can you improve your next vacation? How do you earn more? So I think you constantly need to think. And in our religion, Islam, it's all about ghawra fikr. So we need to continue doing that in our life. I remember one of my teachers in DHA degree college told me that you should always rely on this. Sometimes you have to listen to your instincts, but also think and think positively. Some people think and procrastinate. I procrastinate a lot, but
Yeah.
but I at the same time I try now. I've started to think that how can I really add value to my life, my partner's life, and my family life. So what is it I need to do, which I enjoy doing, but also everyone takes benefit of it as well.
Awesome. No, that was great advice. So I'm gonna put you in the spot here a little. I think this is a hard question. So if you were to look back or go back in time with the experience you have right now, when you first moved to Canada, would there be anything you would change in terms of how you approach the job market or how you reach out to mentors or anything along those lines? You can take your time with this one because it's
No, no, I that's a good question, Nader, and I've thought about it before because when I landed in Canada, I started to reach out to people from our alumni from CBM and people I reached out to LinkedIn. I was actually trying to get opinions from opinion leaders, people that I knew.
yeah,
8 out of 10 said to me that, you need to jump into the market, start working. You have to, make your ends meet, pay, provide for your family, complete your time in Canada, whatever. 2 out of 10 people were those people who kept insisting, acquire a skill, get a specialized skill set, get a Canadian education, because if you get it, it will add value to your work. So if someone is giving you an advice, which is for your own improvement, for your own betterment, and you don't like it, trust me, it is for you. Good things, they don't come that easy and not that cheaply. So if someone is saying
yeah,
that get a specialized skill, I should have got into SQL or Jira or project management, getting a PMP certification or even an SAP like 3 years ago from now. Because now I see when I speak to people in the industry, they're like, oh, companies are requesting bigger tech companies like Microsoft or IBM, Deloitte, they're actually implementing tools and servers with their companies or their partners, making sure that they go live in 2026 and 2027, which means that they need
Yeah.
resources to implement those projects. And this time, right now, is probably the right time to acquire such skills. And technically, it doesn't sound that easy. It sounds easy, but it's not that easy in terms of acquiring a new skill and moving and paving away from what you're currently doing. So it takes a lot of courage. So I think as someone who is going through that process itself, and again, probably I'll have a better version of myself in a year, but right now, if I
Int-
take a look back at this video after a year, probably this is what I would be advising, is that acquire a skill, because conventional practices will become obsolete because of AI, Gen AIs, and future technologies. So try to make your worth more than where you are currently at. Don't rely on your experience solely. Acquire a skill. You will make an impact for sure.
Yeah, I think your story is really interesting because, you're involved in the community, you're working, you have family. So, and you're helping others, like in terms of passing your advice and experience forward. So, like, how do you get the time to manage all this? Like, in terms of what's your way to go about that? Because I assume it could be quite overwhelming at times, right?
It is overwhelming, but it was a lot
Yeah.
overwhelming when we started working on the community itself. Danish and I, our wives, they both complain that how do you manage your work, your job, your family, and the community itself. So we used to get this a lot probably 5 years ago, but now I think now that the community itself is on autopilot, I would say everything.
Oh,
There
awesome.
are volunteers in each region, and they're working unconditionally without any pressure, no time frames, nothing at all, because they trust in the community. They don't trust in my face or Danish face. They trust the community. We've helped build that community, which sort of tapers the way towards trust. So once they believe in the community itself, things are on their own. I know that we have to set certain procedures, guidelines, policies, and we train our volunteers across the globe. But once I think that system is there and people believe in the community itself, this is this works out. In an autopilot phase, frankly.
Right. And in terms of like key traits that you hope to maintain from Pakistan in Canada, in terms of either your work life, your personal life, is there anything that specific that comes to mind that as you live in Canada or move somewhere else, like what would you try keeping from your experience in Pakistan?
I think the most important part is staying close to your family as much as you can. I think what I realize, especially when you're working from home, you're working remotely, try to cherish that time with your family, because by the time your kids reach the age of 18, you're only going to spend probably 25% of the time with them, because the 75% of the time that you
Right.
spend with them is until they grow at the age of 18. So firstly, that's family. Number two is your principles. So the principles that you employ come from your family, whether it's your personality traits or your persona or what you believe in. So keep believing in those traits, because it really comes from religious aspects. It comes from cultural values. So I think we should keep upholding them. But at the same time, it's also important that you adapt to the environment where you're living in. That means that you need to understand the cultures that are evolving here in workplaces. Your child is going to school, which is open to a very different set of environment, and it's a very inclusive environment. So you have to make sure that you give practical advices to your kids. Do not superimpose. Do not be strict on your child. Tell them the reality of what is going on before they ask you questions. So that's very
Right.
important. And I think last thing is that control over your finances. I I wouldn't have said finances if you would have asked me this question last year, but I think a credit crunch is what all we are facing in families. Disposable incomes are depleting, cost of living has gone up. So it's really important that we keep our head cool and straight when we are struggling in terms of managing our finances. So it's important that you do not cloud your mind with a lot of budget issues, mismanagement issues. So keep your head straight. So that's where that's what I really think that your partner comes in, because you need the moral and that mental support when you're living
Right.
away from family. So yeah, so I think a lot of it, you might have noticed that for me, it evolves within the spectrum of the family system. So I think
Family.
we are lucky as, I would say, in our religion, even as South Asians, that we have a joint family system. In a way, it's really beneficial. We need to continue, carrying it forward as well.
Awesome. So I guess we could end off. You could take your time with this question. Like, how do you define success?
I think for me, success is your frame of mind. It's your mental state of how you feel. I think for me, success is defined as happiness, whether it's monetary, whether it is in terms of any achievement. So I think for me, if you are mentally comfortable in where you are in life, you are in the right place. Because for me, if you're praying 5 times a day, you are thankful to Allah all the time. So that means that you are thankful for everything you have, and you do not have any shikwa or any um, complaints in life. Because I know that life can be brutal at times. You have your highs and lows, but accept what is written in your fate. But again, you are trying your level best to, make things work for you, for your family. So I think your positive mindset itself is in a way success. It's all there in your mind. And people who are on the streets, kids on the streets, probably they're far better off in terms of their mental comfort as compared to a person who is watching the screen, trading the whole day, making millions of dollars, but also losing millions of dollars. So he feels really bad in the end, but at the same time, you just have to see the mental state of both those individuals on the street and on the screen.
Right. Awesome. No, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Like, you've gone through both your experiences as a brand manager, product manager, as well as starting your own business, your involvement in Soul Brothers as well, and allowing that community to grow, and, all the activities that happen in it. And thanks for being on.
I appreciate it, Azam. Shout out to you for actually inviting me over. I think this is an amazing initiative that you're doing, and it's the privilege to be part of this podcast and share my humble experiences to you and the audience.